Today we're going to be making this magical jellyfish together, so if you don't know what supplies you need, check out the intro video on my channel. It'll give you all the info. Don't forget to subscribe so you can make your way back here. We're going to start with a rounded brush shape and some plain white paint. We're going to put it right on this white canvas. We're just going to make a little bit of a circle for the jellyfish's head and then a little squiggle down for the tail. And then just grabbing a big brush for the background, we're going to throw some black on the corners and fill everything else in that's not jellyfish with some blue. Now here's the thing, that black paint is wet, so as you can already see it's going to blend into that blue a little bit on occasion. That's okay, we like that. So just taking the time to go around that outline of our initial white jellyfish shape, filling it in with blue, letting some of that black pick up and mush around with that blue as we go through, pushing a lot of these background strokes going up and down to give it a nice vertical feel, and then just blending it out. It's a lot of grabbing some blue paint and mushing it in here and then just blending everything out smoothly. You can see again where it picks up a little bit of that black sometimes and gets a little bit darker. We're okay with that. Water is your friend to help this paint move around it smoothly, so don't forget to mix that in as needed. And of course, we can always wipe this brush off and grab a little bit more blue if we're getting too much of that black mixed in. As we go around this jellyfish shape, we might alter it a little bit with this background color getting on top of it. That's okay, it's mostly just a layout to help us out when we get to painting that here in just a minute. Plus it works as a safeguard to make sure our jellyfish is mostly white starting out instead of turning our background color, and it'll make it a lot easier to paint. Getting our last few touches here to make our background to our happy place, get those brush strokes nice and smoothed out, let it be streaky because it's water, so it's okay to be streaky. It's going to be glowing around that jellyfish, so it's just a little bit lighter towards the figure than it is outside of it. And then it's time to paint that jelly. So grabbing a small paintbrush, plain white paint, we're just going to define the shape of the head. Now the shape of the jellyfish head is kind of an oval shape that has had the bottom of it cut off. So just using that small paintbrush and that plain white and making this oval shape that the bottom part cut off, it is a little bit of a blue color because that background we're touching is still wet and the wet paint's mixing with wet paint and making a new color for us, and we like that. And then for the middle of the head, this is just a tiny bit of yellow and white, and we're only going to put that in the very center of that oval shape, and we can kind of start puffing the bottom middle of that oval shape into more of like a rounded head shape. Now we're moving on to the tail, still using that same small brush, just cleaning it out in between colors, grabbing a little bit of pink and sprinkling it on in the middle. And then just outside of that, we can start to squiggle on this red color, not even cleaning out that pink because we're just jumping straight into red and those colors are friends, but starting to give some little bit of shape to that tail, making it a little bit more wiggly or squiggly around some of the edges, kind of jumping around with the different colors we're going to be putting on so that there is lots of colors all over the place on this. So this is our red, and then of course we want to add a little bit of that pink to the head of the jellyfish as well, following the kind of rounded motion we made earlier with that yellow and just defining some of those individual rounded parts of the head a little bit better. And then every color we put up here at the top, we're going to put on the tail. So this is just some yellow without white mixed in. It's a little bit more of a vibrant yellow. We're going to put that at the top and on the tail here. The placement of the colors is a little bit random, so we're just going to be jumping around between them, maybe leaving it a little bit lighter in the middle, like where it's glowing from, and then using darker colors like this purple here to help define some sections, or hitting it on the edges with the darker colors like this to start getting some of those curly, streaky bits of the tail to look more curly and streaky just by making those same rounded shapes in the tail. And then of course we're adding this to the head, so we put it on the tail. And then this jellyfish is still going to be a little bit transparent in parts, so here is a little bit of blue just to help mimic a reflective or transparent part of it, adding little squiggles onto the tail, or even up here onto the head, adding a little bit of white since it's already blue there, just to give it a little bit more of that translucent, transparent, kind of see-through feel to it, adding some little white streaks. This will help it look a little bit more like you could actually see through parts of it, to where there's some of those colors poking through, but then the edges and the bottom of it is kind of outlined in some white. Same thing on the tail, we just put some white up there on the head, so we're going to use a plain white highlight in parts of this tail. Now you can really hit some of those curves to make it look like it is bending and flowing and really grabbing in all kinds of different directions. And this is also a great time to go back and hit any of those key colors if you need a little bit more of them, or if something has, disappeared or not been filled in yet. Just grab any of the colors we've done, sprinkle those in there, hit it with a little bit more of a white highlight. And then we're going to be adding our little stingers. This is a angled brush and some plain white paint. You can use whatever brush you like to make really small lines. I have a preference for angled brushes for really tiny lines, so that's what I'm using here. Using a light touch and just the tip with that brush really flattened out. Keeping in mind as we bring these little stingers in that they go all the way around that jellyfish, so we can't see behind it, but there are little parts where the stingers would stick out, like between the squiggly parts here, so adding some little white lines to represent background stingers, and then even putting some here over the front of that squiggly tail so that we've got some we've got some of those stingers in front of our squiggle as well, because of course they would reach out closer to us than that squiggly tail would. Hitting some of those lower, longer little stingers as well, and just really making sure we've got good variety throughout those stingers around that jellyfish. Then I think we should go ahead and throw in some bubbles. We are underwater after all, so with just a small paintbrush and some plain white, we can make little half circles, and then put a big circle around the half circles, or just like little partial circle, and a whole circle around it. You can even do a big circle and then a small circle around that big circle. You can do kind of an overlapping circle with circle, not exactly like a Venn diagram, but where there's just like one slightly askew from the other one. Here's a little bit better of a close-up. You can see it, we're just making like little half circles, and a circle around that, little half circles. We can even do a little bitty circle that you can't really see. We can do like a circle with half circles around it, just kind of changing it up between circles, half circles, quarter circles, circles around circles, circles overlapping circles, to get all those different varieties of bubbles like they normally would be. And then we're going to go in here and get a little bit more of a well-defined outline. This is just that background blue. We're kind of cupping the edges of those rounded parts of this fluffy head for the jellyfish, squiggling in some little lines to give you that like veiny look that they sometimes have close up. So just kind of doing little squiggly definitive lines there. And then of course, since we're bringing this darker blue at the top, we might hit a little bit of the darker blue on the bottom as well in just a minute, just kind of finding those little rounded shapes and really defining them, giving it a nice crisp edge between the head of the jellyfish and the long beautiful tail of the jellyfish. And then of course hitting the tail with this darker color like we just did. It's also a great time to go back and sprinkle in some more colors through all those different little squiggles and shapes. This is one of those trust the processes ones, because it's like you have nothing and then all of a sudden you have a jellyfish, and I think yours looks amazing and you've done a great job. I'm so proud of you. Can't wait to see where you hang this one up. It's been great having you here today. Don't forget to subscribe so you can find your way back to this channel, and I'll see you next week.